Hi and welcome to the 7th video in this series where we're going to learn about HTML and style sheets. Now CSS style sheets or CSS is used to style HTML element. So the first thing we have to do is to get an element, and in this video I'm going to use the div tag. With CSS, normally what we do is to either change one property of the tag that we have selected or more than one property of the tag. The property could be the border or the font size, the color, and what have you. But before we can efficiently work with CSS and HTML, we are supposed to know how to effectively include the CSS into our document. The first way that we can include CSS in our HTML is by the use of the style property that comes with the individual element. Now if I appended a style property here and say change the color to either green and went ahead to give the div a content, say my first div, when I head back to my browser and perform a quick refresh, I'm expecting to see a green content on the screen. What if I went ahead to give it more styles, like say the font size, and change this to say 100 pixel? Get back to my browser and perform a refresh. As we can see that the font is bigger than it used to be. Now this is just one way of adding CSS to the HTML document, but as you can tell that doing it this way could get a little bulky if we had so many styles to give. So one very nice way of changing things around is to use an internal style sheet by first declaring a style block in the head section of your document. Then by the help of CSS selectors, we can select the individual element that we want to effect change on, and then we style it to our specification. So the first selection that I'm going to do will be I'll use an element selector by just selecting the div this way. Since it is the only div that we have on the whole page, then we are going to change the color property to green, and then we're going to change the font size to, this time around we are going to give it 200 pixel. So we're expecting this to be bigger when we refresh, and then it works as expected. But also using the internal style sheets could make our whole document become very large if we had lots of styles that we want to apply to different elements. So the next way that we are going to use CSS is by the use of an external style sheet. External style sheets have to be linked to the HTML document by using the link tag, and then we set a relationship or the relation to the page, which is a style sheet. Then the next thing we want to do is to set a location, or we want to give it a directory where it can find a file. Now we do not have a CSS file, so let's use the advanced new file plugin to create one. Control Alt and N, then we create a folder called CSS followed by a style.css file. And as we can see, this has been created for us dynamically, CSS, and we can find our file. However, to effectively navigate to the CSS file, we need to understand how to work with relative paths and absolute paths in HTML. Relative paths are just a way of defining a path by the use with reference to the current working directory. So as you can see, I'm working in a folder called test, and to get to the folder called CSS, I must first move back to my root folder, and to do that I'm going to use 2 dots then /, which tells the browser to move back once to the root working directory, then move to a folder called CSS, and in the CSS folder we have to find a file called style.css. To prove that this works, let's go ahead and change the style of the element div. But before then, we want to perform a refresh in the browser so that we do not have any style at the moment. Now the first thing I want to do here is to first select as usual. Then next I want to change the border, and then I'm going to set the border to 5 pixel, in size, then I'm going to make it a solid border, and I'll change the color to red. Go ahead and then I refresh the browser to see if the change has really taken effect. So as we can see, the border has been changed to red, and then we have a 5-pixel size border. But then you remember what I said about HTML elements being rectangles on the page. This is a vivid example of it. As you can see, this is a rectangular box on the page, and once it is a rectangular box, we can apply other styles to change the shape. So that is pretty much it with HTML and linking CSS document. In the next video, we are going to take a look at how to work with selectors. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.